Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to Mike's Inspiration Station, the show that helps inspire your creativity. I'm glad you could join me today. On today's show, we're going to learn all about oil paints. I like oil paints because of their slow drying time. So what do you say we learn more about oil paints? Let's get learning. These are different types of canvases. These are canvas boards. Canvas stretched and glued over a very dense cardboard. This is stretch canvas. It's canvas stretched tightly and stapled over a wooden frame. You can also buy canvas that comes in a pad form, and you can tear off individual sheets. Let's talk about oil paint brushes. These are bristle brushes. The bristle brush is a very firm brush for moving the paint. These are what flat tip brushes look like. Their edge is flat and straight, like this. These are filbert brushes. They're flat brushes with rounded tips. Synthetic brushes are manufactured, and sable brushes are made from real animal hair. They're a much softer brush. This is what they call a fan brush. Here's what the fan brush does. Here's two different colors of paint together. The fan brush is a great tool for blending two colors. Look at that. You can paint thin or thick. Round brushes are a good all-round brush for creating thin strokes as well as very fine strokes, depending on how you manipulate the tip. Flat tip brushes come in various sizes, and they're great for making broad strokes. This is using the flat side of a filbert brush. You can also use the filbert brush on its side to create finer strokes. Let's learn about painting knives. This trowel tip knife is great for mixing colors and manipulating and moving the paint around. You can create different textures and thicknesses of paint. It's also great for applying paint to your canvas. Oil paints. Oil paints come in various size tubes, like these. You need to thin your oil paint with a thinner or a solvent. You can also purchase water mixable oils. You can thin them and clean your brushes with plain water. Here's an example. See how the water reacts with the oil paints? It's like watercolor. Palettes are used for holding your paints and mixing your paints. They're made of different materials. Here is a wooden palette. This is a plastic palette. Disposable palettes. Once you're done with your painting, you merely tear it off, exposing a brand new sheet. These metal containers are called dippers. They clip right onto your palette. They come in handy when you need to thin your paint or clean your brush. There are a few different ways you can create your sketch on your canvas. You can use a graphic pencil or a charcoal pencil. This is a charcoal pencil. Charcoal pencils are soft and easy to blend. They also can smear very easily. This is a graphite pencil. Like the charcoal pencil, the graphite pencil is easily blended, and it too is easily smudged or smeared. Both the charcoal pencil and the graphite pencil will smudge and mix with your paints, leaving an undesirable result. It's a good idea to seal your sketch with a spray fixative in a well-ventilated area. You can also sketch with paint. Just thin some paint with a small brush and start sketching. You'll need an easel for holding your canvas as you paint. They come in a variety of designs and prices. Here's a neat idea to make a brush holder. Take an ordinary household plastic container and fill it with rice. Just pour the rice in like so. There we go. And it makes a perfect brush holder. Hi, Mike. Hi, boys and girls. Hi, BT. There are many famous artists who painted religious oil paintings, like Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper, or Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. These paintings were created during a period called the Renaissance. Thanks, BT. Why, it's my pleasure, Mike. All right, the first step in our oil painting is to do the sketch, and I'm going to use a soft leaded pencil to do that. I'm drawing the shape of a tree right now, being very loose and sketchy. Right over here. And these are the leaves. Notice how I'm holding my pencil? Very, very loose. There's no stiffness in my wrist. And now I'll sketch out the tree trunk. Earlier I mentioned spraying my surface with a spray fixative. You can purchase the spray fixative at your local arts and crafts store, and that seals it so it doesn't mix with the paint. There we go, some branches coming off the main trunk. And we'll do the side of the tree trunk. Now some of the roots. There's part of the hill right there, and there's the other side of the hill. I've established that my light source is coming from the upper right hand corner, so that'll help give me an idea where I want the shading to be on these leaves. I'm going to put another hill right there. And I'll just rough in some shrubbery or some bushes in the distance. Just adding some shrubs or maybe trees in the background. Just like that. There we go. That looks pretty good. And there we have a tree on top of a hill with a small hill and some trees in the background. Now I'll seal my sketch with a spray fixative. Be sure you do it in a well-ventilated area. Alright, the next step is to start painting. I'm going to use this particular type of oil color. It's water-based oil color. And water-based makes it easy to use, because all I have to do is use water to clean my brush and to thin the paint. This plastic container will work well to clean and thin my brushes. Now I'm going to add some yellow right there, and let's see, a little bit of green, of dark green, which I'll use for the foliage, for the trees and the foreground hill. And now some blue, which I'll add white to make the sky. And a very dark brown, which is called Van Dyke brown. I'm going to squeeze out some red, like so. See how handy the palette is? This is where I'll mix all my colors, and a nice big glob of white, which I'll use when I paint the clouds and create the sky. Okay, I have my paint on my palette and I'm ready to paint. It's a good idea to have some rags handy or some paper towels to wipe your brush. Okay. Now this is where the palette knife comes in handy. I want to make a sky blue for the background. So I'm going to take some white, a little bit of blue, add that to the white, just like so. See that? And I'm mixing up a nice sky blue color. Look at that. There we go. Now I can start painting. And I'm using a wide brush so I can cover a larger area quickly. Moving the paint around. Where I want clouds, I'm going to leave it white. Being very loose. Let the brush do the work. Some more blue there. I'm using a wide, flat tip brush. I'm applying this sky blue color directly. I'm not thinning it out. I'm using the paint as I mixed it. And later on, I'll go back and soften the edges of those clouds. We'll add some white. But right now, I'm filling in the sky with blue, leaving white for the clouds. For the top of the tree, I've created some nice shades of green by adding a dark green to yellow. And I'll just start blocking in the top of the tree with this wide brush. You can choose to paint thick or thin. I'm painting thin. I'm thinning it with water, just so that I can spread it out more. I'll just paint that green until I have the base coat of green for the tree's leaves. It's a good shade of green, and then I'll add a darker green to create shading on the leaves. Let's add some tone down here. Horizontal strokes. I'll add some water. I'll thin it out again, being very loose, just spreading it out, thinning it out. You can thin them almost like a wash, somewhat like a watercolor painting. Broad paint strokes like so. And again, the great thing about water-based oil paints is you can thin them with just plain water. Very thin, look at that. Now I have a dark brown, but I'm making a new brown for the tree trunk, so I've mixed some red and green together to create this new brown color. Alright, this is a very nice brown for this tree trunk. Look at that. I'll just paint that in there like so. Separate the branches. I'm using a medium-sized brush to help me fill in the tree trunk. Now some smaller branches. Now this wide tip flat brush allows me to paint two ways. I can paint broad strokes or I can paint thin strokes. Notice how I turn my brush on the side to create the roots on the tree trunk. Very nice. I'm going to take a wide brush now and brush over the top of the foreground that I've already applied paint to and just blend it in. Smooth it out. Now I'll add some color in the background using this wide brush. Look how quickly I can cover an area. Look at that. Very thin on painting. Almost like a watercolor. You can paint really thick if you'd like, or you can paint thin like I'm doing. Now I'm taking my sky blue color that I've mixed already. I'm adding it to the green to create a color that'll work well for these background trees or bushes. Look at that. They're off in the distance. See how I'm holding my brush? I don't feel restricted. I'm very loose. And that's very important when you're painting, is to be loose and don't be stiff. I just want to add some darks to this now. I'll continue to smooth out this dark green. I'm going dark to light here. And I'll blend it so that it blends into the lighter green. Indicate some shadows or grass near the roots. Look at that. Again, I'm being very loose, just to add some shading. I'm adding some darks by the root area here. I'm taking my wider brush now and smoothing that out. Look at that. Just smooth that out. Just like that. Paint is still wet, allowing me to blend it. Again, I'm using a wide brush to add some green to the left side of the tree. Let the bristles create the effective leaves, and adding some darks to my leaves. That's my light source coming in from the upper right hand corner. You see that? Blend it in, and I'm letting the brush do the work. A little more green paint. See how these darks give the tree some shape and form? It's amazing what you can do with a wide brush. You can create texture, or you can blend a large area. Now I've added some blue to my white to create a very light blue, and I'm going to accent the bottom of these clouds, just to create some tone on the lower part of the clouds. And this shaded area will give my clouds some very nice dimension. Now I'm going back with white, and I'm going to blend it together. And I'll soften the edges of that light blue I added. See that? I'm adding white. The white is going to mix with the other color, and it'll soften the edges. Not trying to be perfect, just relaxing as I paint. Some white right there to show some separation between those bushes in the distance, or those trees in the distance. Some more white right here between those branches. Look at that. Let's see what happens when I take away the paint. And for this takeaway technique, you need to have just a damp brush. You see that? Just like I showed you on the watercolor show, if you've seen it. I'm using a brush that has no paint. With the brush being slightly damp, it removes the paint rather than apply it. That way I can create some subtle highlights on this tree trunk. And that's why I call it the takeaway technique. Now I'm using my dark brown or Van Dyke brown right here below the leaves, and those leaves would create a shadow on those branches where the branches go into the tree, up into the leaves. Now some branches protruding throughout the leaves like so. Some of those branches you would see. Another one coming off here, like that. I'm mixing a little white and yellow to create a highlight color for the hills. See that? Just to create some highlight on the top of that foreground hill. And if it's not bright enough, you can always go back and add white to the yellow, or add white to it to brighten it up. Now I'll mix up a little more of this highlight color. It's a yellowish green color, and I'll add that to the background hill. Some people have never even tried oil paints because they're afraid. They think they can't do it, and I say give it a try. When using oil paints, the important thing is don't worry about being perfect. Just have fun and enjoy yourself. There. How about some grass near the roots? Growing around the bottom of the tree. Using a smaller brush to create this grass. There we go. Very small strokes to create the grass, just like that. I've mixed up a little yellow and white together. Using this palette knife, I'll add highlights to our tree. And I'm being very loose with my palette knife. That lighter color just enhances those leaves, brightens them up where the sun is hitting the edge of those leaves. It does help bring out the shape of the tree, make the tree come to life. Now here I've added some white to that light green, and I'm using my palette knife to create some light splashing across the grass on the hill. I'm highlighting these areas to give it some texture and reflecting onto the foreground hill, just like that. The sun is shining. Now I'm going to add a shadow coming off the tree, and I'll start right there between the roots and extend it outward just like this. Just a little bluish green color. And as you can see, the paint is still wet. Now I'm adding a little dark green using my palette knife. It's the perfect tool for adding texture, adding some darks with my palette knife to create some texture on the edge of those leaves. And then I'm going to go back with my big brush and soften those edges. It's amazing what you can do with a wide brush. Now the tree has some shape, doesn't it? There are many famous artists that are great painters throughout history that God has blessed with a wonderful talent. I've mixed up a nice light brown color and I'm adding it to the tree trunk, right on top of the tree trunk like so. Look at that. Notice how I'm using the edge of this trowel palette knife to create some texture. A little green to that light blue. The light is coming in from this direction, so this side of those trees will be highlighted, and I'm using my palette knife to add those highlights to these bushes or trees off in the distance. I know where my light source is, so I know where the highlights are going to be. That looks fun, doesn't it? Now I'm adding pure white to those clouds. Look at that. Look how the white just makes those clouds pop. When I'm done painting, I'll thoroughly clean all my brushes and palette knives with soap and water. Awesome. Notice I'm painting thick now. I'm applying the paint with my palette knife very thick. The thicker the paint, the longer it takes to dry, and more white between the branches. It's important that you're not afraid to try and use these techniques and experiment with the palette knife. And that takes practice. Don't worry about being perfect. The key here is don't be afraid to try them. Give it a try. Very nice. I'm using my small trowel palette knife to create some small clouds in the background. Now a few more highlights right here. Now I'm going to soften up some of these highlights with my wide brush. And there you have a landscape done in oils. Alright, that finishes my painting. Now the next step is to let it dry. And when it's totally dry, which should take a few days, is to seal it with this varnish. And what it does is, it puts a protective coating on it. Wow. What an informative show we had today. Thank you for sharing time with me. Now my advice about using oil paints is this. Don't be afraid to try them. Just experiment with them. Get a feel for them. And the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. Until next time, please stay creatively inspired. So long, and may God bless all of you.